The stabbing of Caesar. Caesar was the emperor of Rome, and the reason he got stabbed was because the Senate did not like him.
Two tribunes, Flavius and Marullus, find scores of Roman citizens wandering the streets, neglecting their work in order to watch Julius Caesar's triumphant parade. Caesar has defended the sons of the deceased Roman general Pompey, his archrival in battle. The tribunes scold the citizens for abandoning their duties and remove decorations from Caesar's statues. Caesar enters with his entourage, including the military and political figures Brutus, Cassius, and Antony. A soothsayer calls out to Caesar to beware the Ides of March, but Caesar ignores him and proceeds with his victory celebration. Cassius and Brutus, both longtime inmates of Caesar and each other, conserves. Cassius tells Brutus that he has seemed distant lately. Brutus replies that he has been to war with himself. Cassius states that he wishes that Brutus could see him as others see him, for then Brutus would realize how honored and respected he is. Brutus says that he fears that the people want Caesar to become king, which would overturn the republic. Cassius conquers that Caesar is treated like a god, though he is merely a man, no better than Brutus or Cassius. Cassius recalls incidents of Caesar's physical weakness and marvels that his fallible man has become so powerful. He blames his and Brutus' lack of will for allowing Caesar to rise to power. Surely the rise of such a man cannot be the work of fate. Brutus considers Cassius' words as Caesar returns upon seeing Cassius. Caesar tells Antony that he deeply distrusts Cassius. Caesar departs, and another politician, Casca, tells Brutus and Cassius during the celebration, Antony offered the crown to Caesar 3 times, and the people cheered, but Caesar refused it each time. He reports that Caesar then fell to the ground and had some kind of seizure before the crowd. His demonstration of weakness, however, did not after the plebeian devotion to him. Brutus goes home and considers Cassius' words regarding Caesar's poor qualifications to rule, while Cassius hatches a plot to draw Brutus and the conspiracy against Caesar. That night, Rome is plagued with violent weather and a variety of bad omens and portents. Brutus finds letters in his house, apparently written by Roman citizens, worried that Caesar has become too powerful. The letters have in fact forged and planted by Cassius, who knows that if Brutus believes in the people, he will support the plot to remove Caesar from power. A committed supporter of the Republic, Brutus fears that the possibility of the dictator-led empire, worrying that the populace would lose its voice. Cassius arrives at Brutus' home with his conspirators, and Brutus, who has already been won over by the letters, takes control of the meeting. Then the men argue to lure Caesar to his house and kill him. Cassius wants to kill Antony too, for Antony, who will surely try to hinder their plans, but Brutus disagrees, believing that too many deaths will render their plot too bloody to dishonor them. Having agreed to spare Antony, the conspirators depart. Portia, Brutus' wife, observes that Brutus is preoccupied. She pleads with him to confide in her, but he rebuffs her. Caesar prepares to go to the Senate. His wife, Calpurnia, begs him not to go describing recent nightmares as she has watched in which the statue of Caesar streamed with blood and smiling men bathed their hands in the blood. Caesar refuses to yield to fear and insists on going to his daily business. Finally, Calpurnia convinces him to stay home, if not out of caution, then as a favor to her. But Decius, one of the conspirators, then arrives and convinces Caesar that Calpurnia has misinterpreted her dreams and the recent omens. Caesar departs for the Senate and the company of conspirators. As Caesar proceeds through the streets towards the Senate, the soothsayer again tries but fails to get his attention. The citizens, hands him a letter warning about the conspirators, but Caesar refuses to read it, saying that his closest personal concern is his last priority. At the Senate, the conspirators speak to Caesar, bowing at his feet and encircling him. One by one, they stabbed him to death. When Caesar sees his dear friend Brutus among him, he gives up his struggle and dies. The murderers bathe their hands and swords into Caesar's blood, thus bringing Calpurnia's promotional to fruition. Antony, having been led away to the false pretext, returns and pledges alliance to Brutus, but weeps over Caesar's body. He shakes hands with the conspirators, thus marking them all guilty while they are appearing to make a gesture of concealing. When Antony asks why they killed Caesar, Brutus replies that he will explain their purpose in the funeral orientation. Antony asks to be allowed to speak over the body as well. Brutus grants his permission, though Cassius remains suspicious of Antony. The conspirators depart. Antony, alone now, swears that Caesar's death shall be avenged. Brutus and Cassius go to the forum to speak in the Republic. Cassius exists to address another part of the crowd. Brutus declares to the masses that though he loves Caesar, he loves Rome more, and Caesar's ambition posed danger to Rome's liberty. The speech placates the crowd. Antony appears to Caesar's body, and Brutus departs. After turning to the pulpit over to Antony, repeatedly referring to Brutus as an honorable man, Antony's speech becomes increasingly sarcastic, questioning the claims that Brutus made his speech to Caesar and acted only out of ambition. Antony points out Caesar brought up much wealth and glory to Rome, and 3 times turned down the offer to crown. Antony then produces Caesar, but will be announced that he will not read it, for it would upset the people in ordinary. The crowd nevertheless begs him to read the will. So he descends from the pulpit and stands next to Caesar's body. He describes Caesar's horrible death, shows Caesar's wounded body to the crowd. Then he reads Caesar's will, which bequeaths a sum of money to every citizen, orders that his private gardens be made public. The crowds become engaged with this generation, and men lies dead, calling Brutus and Cassius traitors. That masses set off to drive them from the city. Meanwhile, Caesar's adopted son and appointed successor, Octavius, arises in Rome and forms a 3-person coalition with Antony and Lepidus. They prepare to fight Cassius and Brutus, who have been driven into the exile and are raised arms outside of the city. At the conspirators' camp, Brutus and Cassius have a heated argument regarding the matter of the money and honor. They ultimately reconcile. Brutus reveals that he is sick with grief for his absence of Portia, has killed herself. The two continue to prepare the battle, Antony and Octavius. That night, the ghost of Caesar appears to Brutus, announcing that Brutus will meet him again on the battlefield. Octavius and Antony march their army towards Brutus and Cassius. Antony tells Octavius where to attack, but Octavius says that he will make his own orders. He is already asserting his authority to the higher Caesar and the next ruler of Rome. The opposing general meets on the battlefield and exchanges insults before beginning combat. Cassius witnesses his own men fleeing and hears Brutus's men are not performing effectively. Cassius sends one of his men, Pindarus, to see the matters of our progress from afar. Pindarus sees one of the leaders, Cassius's best friend, Titanius, one being surrounded by cheering troops, and concludes that he has been captured. Cassius despairs and orders Pindarus to kill him with his own sword. He dies proclaiming that Caesar is avenged. Titanius himself then arrives. The men encircling him were actually his commanders, cheering virtually that he had earned. Titanius sees Cassius' corpse and, mourning to his death of his friend, kills himself. Brutus learns of the deaths of Cassius and Antonius with a heavy heart, and prepares to take on the Romans again. When his army loses, Dome appears in enmity. Brutus asks one of his men to hold his sword while he impales himself on it. Finally, Caesar can rest satisfied. He says as he dies, Octavius and Antony arrived. Antony speaks over Brutus's body, calling him the noblest of Roman of all, while the other conspirators acted out of envy and ambition. He observed Brutus generally believed that he had acted for the benefit of Rome. Octavius ordered that Brutus be buried in the most honorable way. The men then depart, celebrating the victory.